Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Collin Manley, and I'm excited to talk about not just some off-season baseball, which we got a lot to talk about in there, but also it's technically award season right now. Technically award season. And we need to be talking about a lot of these major awards because most of our contestants and finalists have been unveiled in the recent days. So it's something that we're definitely going to be starting about. And then I want to be talking about the Mets a little bit. Now, I think that we are in for a crazy offseason when it comes to the Mets. And I want to tell you why. I think they are going to be in on a lot of people, at least on the rumor mill, that's for sure. I think that's what's going to happen. Want to also talk about two players in particular. We're going to get down to the nitty-gritty when it comes to Trevor Bauer and his offseason, what we think is going to happen with the contract and everything, teams that could be involved, and the same with Marcell Ozuna. These are two of the guys that may not be the best free agent. There's a couple other guys I think are the better free agents, but these two are definitely ones that I think are interesting, at least for sure. In the whole thing, I don't really know where they could go. There's a lot of different outcomes that are possible. And I want to talk about it a little bit. But I want to make sure that we get down with these awards right away. So we can talk about MVPs, American League, National League, which those announcers are going to be announced on Thursday, November 12th on the MLB Network. We also can talk about our Cy Youngs, which those are going to be announced on Wednesday, November 11th, and our Rookie of the Years, which are going to be announced on November 9th, Monday of next week. So we have a lot of awards that are going to be coming our way, and I really want to start with the big ones first. I want to make sure that I have enough time to talk about these ones compared to Rookie of the Year. While as much fun as it will be, I think it's a little more clear-cut with some of those. Most Valuable Player, starting off with the National League. We have three contestants that are very, very deserving guys. Now, I think this one's a little more clear-cut, but I could see this voting go really any way possible. But I have to remind and remember that this is a regular season award. So our first finalist being Mookie Betts, former MVP winner in the American League. Now, this would just be phenomenal to win an MVP in the American League and National League. Starting off with that. He had a great season with the Dodgers. Hit .292 with 16 home runs, 10 stolen bases. He's received MVP votes in every season since 2015. And he was runner-up in 2016. So this is nothing crazy at all. We should not be surprised that he's in this conversation. But I really do think, and this is something that bothers me in MVP conversations, it's most valuable player. I don't think that he isn't great. But if I take Mookie off that Dodgers team, I still think they're going to be really good regardless. I don't want to bash him at all. I don't want to say anything negative about Mookie. But it just feels like he is not as valuable potentially as these other two guys. Which Freddie Freeman is the next guy who's never finished above fourth in the MVP voting before. And I think that's going to change this year for sure. Well, we know that. It's going to be first, second, or third. Now, the first baseman hit .341 with 13 home runs, 23 doubles, 53 RBIs, all while having a 1.102 OPS. He was a big reason why the Braves had one of the best offenses in baseball, him and Marcell Ozuna, but Freeman's numbers were just all around better. Okay. Our third guy, Manny Machado. This one is interesting just in the sense because he got the nod over Tatis. He was a big component of why this offense was great in San Diego as well. Great regular season, 16 home runs in that 60-game stretch. He was on pace for 43 home runs in 162 games, which would have been a great season. Batted .304. Him and Tatis 1-2 were just great. And it's another thing, again, it's similar to Betts. If I take Machado off of that team, yes, you're lowering a little bit, but are you going to be the biggest hit in the National League? I think Freddie Freeman would be the MVP. I mean, that batting average alone is incredible. Batting .341, having all those RBIs and doubles, like he was just a matchup nightmare at the plate for a lot of pitchers. The other two, great, awesome seasons, but I just look as Freeman being the top guy in these three. But I will not be surprised if it goes any direction in this. American League finalists, we got Jose Abreu, former Rookie of the Year in 2014. MVP award would be a great thing to follow up. He led the AL in hits at 76, slugging percentage at .617, and also the majors in RBIs, total bases, not to mention 19 home runs, which was second to only Luke Voit on this season. They were a surprise team, the White Sox, a little bit. We knew they were going to be better. We knew they were going to improve from previous years, but we didn't think that they would be that great and almost win an American League Central this year. I think Jose Abreu is going to be most likely the MVP. I think if I had a vote, that's where I would lean, just because towards the end of the season, like the second half, he was just outstanding. Just outstanding. And I think he was just the best of the three, while these other two were really great. Now, DJ LeMahieu finished fourth in the AL MVP in his first season with the Yankees last year. Then he upped every single statistic that he had. I mean, I know there's some counting numbers be better, but let's just look at the hitting lines. I mean, 364 batting average, on-base percentage 421, OPS of 1.011. He has set himself up to get paid this offseason, and he's going to get some MVP votes. Both very deserving. Both very deserving. I lean Abreu just a little bit more in his offensive production in the sense of RBIs, home runs, while still having a great average. But LeMahieu is very deserving of being recognized in this as well. And then our last finalist being Jose Ramirez. Back-to-back third-place finishes in the AL MVP, 2017, 2018. 2019 was just not a good year for him, but he's bumping back a little bit. Career best, 993 OPS, 17 homers, 10 stolen bases. He was on pace for 45 home runs, 27 stolen bases in a 162-game season. He was the offensive production that Cleveland really did not have. And there is going to be some added extra value in the sense of where would the Indians have been without him? Yes, their pitching was good, but offensive production was hard to find, and he brought it. So it's three great names for this again between those guys. I lean Abreu. Won't be surprised if it goes any way whatsoever, similar to the National League. I just think there's three very deserving candidates. Now, Cy Young for the American League, we'll start there. Unfortunately, I think this one is a little bit too easy. Shane Bieber being one of our finalists. He's the lock for me. He had the pitching triple crown. I wish this was 162 games just to see if he held it. And he held it for the entire majors in this 60-game sample. Fourth in the 2019 AL Cy Young. He came out strong with 8 wins, a 1.63 ERA, and 122 strikeouts. He's going to get this award. Congrats to these other two finalists, but I'm sorry, it's Shane Bieber's. And so you got to give this maybe your shout out to Kenta Maeda, who had a 0.75 whip. Awesome. Coming from the Dodgers. 6-1, 2.7 ERA, 80 strikeouts, and he ate a ton of innings in those 11 starts. Was everything that the Twins could hope he could be in the offseason trade. tip of the hat to him. There's nothing wrong with being in the top 3 of the Cy Young. And then a positive here for the Toronto Blue Jays is Hyun-Jin Ryu gets to be one of our other guys in the Cy Young run. Now, he led the majors with a 2.32 ERA and an NL Cy Young Award voting. He was finished second last year for the Dodgers in 2019 with those 2 things. And coming into Toronto, I think you got to be pleasantly surprised with what you got. You signed him to be your ace. But top 3 Cy Young right away, got to be happy. Got to be happy with what you got. The left-hander, 5-2, 2.69 ERA this season. Career best 9.7 strikeouts per 9 innings. Was surprised that he had his best with that. Blue Jays, positive future going forward. Very positive. Good thing for those. So shout out to Maeda, Jin Ryu for being involved. Sorry, this is Shane Bieber's award. That's the way it's going to go. National League, Cy Young. Trevor Bauer, most likely sitting at the top, I would imagine as the favorite. Finished 6th in the Cy Young in American League in 2018. Not a great 2019. Went 2-5 and 6.39 ERA in 10 starts last year for Cincinnati. But we can forget all that because he came in as he is setting himself up for free agency as well. Led the National League with a 1.73 ERA, struck out 100 batters over 73 innings. He allowed 1 earned run or fewer in 8 of his 11 starts, striking out at least 12 batters in all 4. It's unbelievable what he did this year for the Reds. And he set himself up for an interesting offseason. And we're going to talk more about that in a future segment. But you just kind of got to shake your head. Is he really rebounded? Really rebounded when things were starting to look a little unsure about his future. Yu Darvish is going to get some nods here, some votes for the Cy Young. One of his best seasons. He was having a stretch where he was unbelievable. You could not hit him. Going 7-0 with a .98 ERA over 7 starts from July 31st to September 4th. That's an incredible stretch. Now, Darvish wasn't as dominant the rest of the way, but he still had some great numbers looking overall. 8-3 on the year, 2.01 ERA, 93 strikeouts and 12 starts. The Cubs are probably sitting there going, that's the Darvish we were expecting when we signed him to that contract. And this was a great bounce back for him. I'm hoping that he can do a lot of the same stuff in 2021. Impressive how he changed up really how he was using his pitches this year. And that was the thing that was great for him. Third man, Jacob deGrom. This list would not be complete without him. Going for that 3rd straight NL Cy Young. Now, he had a tough start. Or I should say a tough start against the Philadelphia on September 16th. But deGrom still had a 2.38 ERA. Led the National League with 104 strikeouts. And he had a 1.67 ERA coming into his last start. Or that start on September 16th. Struck out 24 batters in 2 starts that had followed. He just had a little up and down stretch that ultimately I think is going to hurt him. But while it's tight, I think this is going to be more between Bauer and deGrom when it comes to the voting. It's going to fall between those two. I think it's going to lean more Bauer than deGrom. But it seems like it's going to be a heated National League Cy Young run. Looking at our Rookie of the Year. Now, this could get interesting. National League will start off with that. Alec Bohm for Philadelphia. Top prospect, came up, looked good. Former 3rd overall pick in the 2018 MLB draft. He had .338 batting average with 4 home runs, 11 doubles, 23 RBIs in just 44 games. Positive things looking for Bohm going forward. I imagine the Phillies are pleased. Jake Cronenworth for San Diego. It looked like it was going to be his award. He was going to run away with it. Coming into September, he was batting .356 with 16 of his 36 hits for extra bases. He had 4 home runs, 3 triples, and 9 doubles. He cooled off, finished the year with a .285 batting average with those 4 homers, 15 doubles, and he played kind of all over the infield. So it's not to say there's any type of knock on him. He's been great. He's done a lot of stuff. But there's one guy that had snuck in this, and we've talked a lot about how pitchers taking a National League or American League Rookie of the Year, it's hard. It's difficult. You have to have numbers that blow people away. And Devin Williams had a stretch that was as dominant as we have ever seen from a reliever. He allowed 1 earned run over 27 innings, 0.33 ERA, 0.63 whip, and struck out 53 batters. It was close to 18, almost 18 strikeouts per 9 innings. His changeup is unbelievable, and then he also brings gas at you. Like, he is setting himself up for the Brewers to have a great back end of their bullpen if they're going to stick with Williams and Hader. That's a 1-2 punch that's scary. And I'm starting to get more and more on the train of Williams sneaks in and takes this. I don't knock Bohm or Cronenworth, but I think Williams just had a dominant enough season that he is going to potentially take this away. That's what I'm thinking could happen. Air American League. Well, we have 3 names, but I think this one's pretty well decided. Christian Javier is someone we got to talk about. The Astros needed pitching help. Lost Garrett Cole, lost Verlander. He had a solid season. 5-2, 3.48 ERA, 0.99 whip, 12 appearances, had 10 starts. Good numbers. But it's not blow you away numbers for a starter trying to get this Rookie of the Year. Sorry. Luis Robert, it's interesting to get a massive extension before you even play a game, but that 6-year, $50 million deal is looking pretty promising. He is one of the best defensive outfielders we have. 10 home runs, 33 games through August before slowing down. Robert still had 31 RBIs and tied our top man when it came to home runs with 11 for rookies. But I think this is going to be Kyle Lewis all the way. First round pick in 2016, and he just looked phenomenal this year. Like we said, tied Luis Robert with 11 home runs, 5 stolen bases. Had some flashes in the outfield when it comes to a defensive glove a little bit. High batting average. Kyle Lewis really had it all. He really had it all for Seattle. They have a building block going forward to go with some other young prospects that they have. It's just exciting time. Exciting time for Seattle, knowing they have some pieces moving forward. So that's our look at our big time guys and all of these. We can talk a little bit briefly. Manager of the Year, Kevin Cash, Charlie Montoya, Rick Renteria are all in there. Most likely going to be between Cash and Renteria. I would say the National League, we have Don Mattingly, David Ross, Jace Tingler. Could be. I think Mattingly did an amazing job with Miami. So I like the idea that he's in there, but that one could go really any way. David Ross in his first year doing good things. Jace Tingler, San Diego was a good surprise team. It could go a lot of ways with that one. So, going to be fun. Looking forward to hearing about these awards, how they go, how the voting breaks down. We're definitely going to talk about it in the future when we can. But we're going to take a quick break, and I want to come back and I want to talk about the potential Mets offseason. I think it's going to be crazy, and I'm going to tell you why coming up here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
It's fun to talk award season, get that out of there. I like how these teams are getting, or leagues are getting a lot better and announcing the finalists, kind of giving us a little bit of a tease before things are fully given to us. I just, it's fun to look at this stuff. I like to look into it a little bit during the season, have those quarter mark, halfway mark, and so on. But sometimes that's just for fun small talk is what it is. It's not really anything true because we need the full season. So there's definitely a little more excitement when it comes to the end of the year. But I want to move on. I want to move past that. Let's talk about something else because I've had something on my mind for a little bit as I have been watching a lot of things unfold with the New York Mets organization. And I am talking mainly about Steve Cohen taking over and being the new man for the Mets. Now, I am in the belief system that this has the potential to be a very crazy offseason for the New York Mets. And I have my reasons why. And to be honest, the Mets have been making moves already. They've already been doing some things, making some decisions. They obviously had some deadlines to meet, so that's why. Like so far, they've offered a qualifying offer to Marcus Stroman, which most likely that will be declined, so I'm not getting too crazy excited there. It should be an extension or an offer in roughly about price tag of $18.9 million. Now, we'll see if he gets something better on the market for more years or if he signs something short term. But like I said, most likely I'm expecting him to decline that offer and move on. But there's other things that have been announced as the Mets had relievers, Dylan Betances and Brad Brash, who picked up their player options. So they're going to be back. And Betances, who's a former Yankee, $6 million contract. He's coming off a very brutal season. If things could turn around, $6 million could look like a value for him, while there was a $3 million buyout. I just think there's a lot more to come. And I have my reasons as to why. So, first off, when someone buys a team, teams change hands. That change in ownership usually comes with a few things. Now, if your team is greatly struggling, you don't look like you have a possible superstar to build around, or you have someone who's a big-time player at a position, you might proceed with a little bit of caution moving forward. You got to build some assets, some draft capital, some minor leaguers, what have you, whatever you're talking about a league. And that's if your team really isn't that great. But the Mets are in an interesting situation because they have some guys, they have some names potentially with a pitching staff, with DeGrom, and maybe a healthy Syndergaard. That could be something. Pete Alonso rebounding a little bit. There's potential in this team. So I have wondered if they would be the ones to be very aggressive to improve, to spend a lot of money, be active in a lot of free agents. Now, there's already been rumors that circulate they're going to be interested in JT Realmuto because they declined their option on their starting catcher. That's an open spot. There's going to be a lot of teams interested in Realmuto, but a team that thinks they're close and can upgrade to get potentially the top 2 or top 3 guy at a position. Oh, and did I forget to mention you would be taking someone away from a rival Phillies team. So why not get aggressive in that sense? Try to upgrade your team, hurt another team in your division. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. I wouldn't be surprised if outside the qualifying offer, the Mets try to make some moves to get some other starting pitching. Go in on Trevor Bauer for a year. Go in on Marcus Stroman for a little bit. There is some starting pitchers on the market that, while maybe it's not crazy deep, that the Mets are trying to prove a point. They want to win. And they're going to be aggressive in finding a guy. I just think that they're going to go after some of these top free agents. They could go after LeMahieu. They could go after Azuña. They can find spots for that. Now, the Azuña one matters a lot on the DH. That's going to be a big part of it. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're aggressive. And another reason why I think so, why this could be a crazy offseason, is because they have another team in the same town that's kind of very successful right now, and they look pretty good. look like they could be World Series contenders? Do you want to be the guy that just bought the Mets and all you hear and talk about is Yankees, Yankees, Yankees? No, you want to have an answer to the Yankees. You want to be competitive. You want to have just as much buzz as that Yankees team. So how do you do that? Well, you make some moves right away. Make some trades. Make some free agent signings. Show that you're trying to make your team better. Do what you can to improve. That's where the crazy offseason can come in. And when you have all of these moves and show that you're aggressive and trying to build a winning team, a winning culture, that's going to win some things over in the media as well. I think there's definitely times where the New York media is not necessarily fair. They like to sell headlines. They like to be aggressive. They like to go after managers, front office, players, whatever. Everyone's fair game in the New York media. But if you're showing that you're trying to attempt to get better, going after top tier guys, now obviously overspending will be a problem, but hitting fair market value on Bauer on the 1-year deal, on Real Muto, getting the best catcher, you might have to set the market again, but you're getting potentially the best guy, so it makes sense. Making some moves to improve your team, not overspending, and just showing that you are aggressive and you believe you can contend and compete, yeah, that's going to win some media members over. Why not start off at a good light, good footing in New York? I can't imagine that everyone has the highest expectations in the world for the Mets as the Yankees have been so good. So why not take a chance and really win some people over? And I don't really look at the National League East and think things are settled for next year. I really don't. The National League East was won by the Braves this year. And don't get me wrong, the Braves are good. The Braves are going to be a solid team again next year. But they have some question marks. Azuña is a free agent. They have to figure things out at third base. And while they had some pleasant surprises, some pleasant surprises in starting pitching, they're still going to have to look at that and see if they go out and make a move or two. Second place, you have the Miami Marlins, who they're up in the air what they're going to be next year. Now, they have some talent, some fun on that team. I mean, Starling Marte is going to be there again. Some young pitching, that's exciting. But what's their bullpen going to be like? Is it going to change over 162 games? They had a winning record of 31-29 with a negative 41 run differential. If I'm the Mets, I look at that and go, that's catchable. We had a losing record and had a worse a better run differential of minus 22. I feel like we're within reach of that. The other team ahead of them are the Phillies, who've been spending a lot of money. But like I said, if you pluck away a Real Muto, you're hurting that Phillies team. This team has been kind of underperforming. I don't look at them and see anything that makes me think, they're going to fix it and turn it all around. Maybe they'll be aggressive in free agency, but I wouldn't be scared of the Phillies at this moment. And then you have a Nationals team that's going to have some health questions as well. Is Strasburg back to being himself? Are they going to make some depth moves to change things? Zimmerman's a free agent. Decline an option to Howie Kendricks. Some of their everyday guys are gone, and there's no DH as of right now. It just feels like, at the minimum, second place is wide open. At the minimum. And if things really turn for the Braves, why couldn't the Mets be more aggressive and have a chance in this? So I just feel like the NL East is just interesting next year, and there's nothing guaranteed. And with all of this accumulating together, then, that change in ownership, having the willingness to be aggressive because they know they can. I mean, these guys are billionaires. They can spend money because they want to spend money. Obviously, they want to try to make money, but who wants to come into a team and have a losing record and not compete? These guys don't have that in their DNA. They don't come in here to not succeed. They want to make money. They want to be competitive. If they're going to be a laughingstock, they're not going to be interested. They're not going to be interested. So they're going to want to be aggressive to improve. They are going to want to answer the Yankees, be that other team in New York. No, they don't want that. They don't want to be that other team. They want to be the team. So they want to try to answer the Yanks. They want to win some media over showing that they're serious, and they want to compete in an NL East that's questionable. I think that's all just coming together, and it makes me think that they have the potential to be aggressive and really surprise some people with the team they try to build next year. I look at this Mets team, and it feels like a perfect storm of everything coming together to try to make some moves. And I'm excited. Let's see if it happens. Let's see if it happens. Collin, you're kind of on the clock here. Can you make this New York Mets team a thing? I think it starts in the 2020 offseason. So we'll see what happens with that. So that's going to be it for this segment. We're going to talk about some players coming up. I want to start with our top guy on the pitching market. We got to talk about his offseason, where things can go. Yeah, that's Mr. Trevor Bauer. We're going to talk about him coming up here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
So we're going to keep on with the offseason chatter and moving on from the Mets and what we think we could possibly be seeing with them. It's time to talk about some actual players, and I'd like to get this going a little bit. I have a few other players I want to talk about and that stuff for another future podcast, but I got definitely two that I want to talk about today, and I'm going to start with the one that I find to be the more interesting of the two, just because of everything he said, what the market could look like, what's the potential of spots that would be interested. There's just a lot that could be going on here altogether. So I want to bring things up to talk about Trevor Bauer's potential offseason. Now, Trevor Bauer is someone that is very interesting because he has come out and openly said, and this has been even confirmed by his agent as well, that he is going to sign one-year contracts from here on out to maximize his value. Now, I understand how this season went, how that could possibly be the case. But I'm still not 100% sold on the idea that he is going to roll with it. Now, Bauer has to understand a couple things. He may not be a Cy Young winner or top 3 guy every year going forward. Yeah, he has the chance to have a lot of things go his way and be really good, but the likelihood of having a repeat season may not be realistic. He led 5-4, and run support was a big reason why. ERA 1.73. Easily the best of his career. Easily. Last year, in 10 starts, a similar sample for the Reds, because he had 11 this year. He was 2-5 with a 6.39 ERA. Okay, things change from year to year. So I don't know if I necessarily believe that his idea is a good one, but he may still try to do it to prove that he's going to get the most guaranteed dollars. So if he looks to go to the 1-year deal this year, he could find his contract to be anywhere from about 25 to 31, $32 million. It's all going to depend on the market and how aggressive people are going to be. So, what are we going to be looking at? So, I want to start with teams that I think are likely to push for him. And we also have to remember he's going to be 30 years old to start next day, but pitchers can, they can go for a little while if arm health and everything goes their way. The Reds are going to be in this conversation, okay? They have to be noted because this is where he's coming from. The team where they just were is always going to be in the discussion. And we're going to come back to the Reds in a little bit, but they're going to be in there. The Yankees have to think about a second guy, some pitching help to go along with Garrett Cole. That is potential. That is possible. So don't be surprised if that. Similar in the sense of the Twins. The Twins have something in Maeda. They're, optimistic with Dobnik. Getting another guy to be more towards the top end, I'm sure will be something that they will be looking for. So if he is really into the short-term deal, the Twins are a team that I would be looking at. Other teams that just need the pitching help, the Red Sox, pitching was awful for them this year. I won't be surprised if they dabble in because we don't know what's going to happen with Chris Sale moving forward. Eduardo Rodriguez, there's a lot in question there. So the Red Sox could be in on this. I'm not all gun-ho in this situation, especially considering my Red Sox fandom in the back. I don't like the idea of overspending. I'd rather have a collection of pitching. That's another conversation for another day. The White Sox, hey, keep adding. You're close. You're close. Help Tony La Russa out. That might be a move there. The Angels, the Mets we talked about, would not be surprised. The Cubs, Giants are a team we could. There's a lot. There is a lot of teams in the MLB. I wouldn't be surprised if Toronto thinks about it as well. I wouldn't be surprised. We could look at so many teams, especially if that 1-year contract is truly on the table. So, I want to talk about a few different things. Who do I think is going to be the team to make the big offer? Who do I think is the team that should be making the big offer because of trying to get his services? And who are the team or teams that would be the best home? So I want to start off with the Reds have really no choice. I think Cincinnati put all their cards on the table last offseason, shelling out money. And they're going to be in conversations on the trade market as well, trying to improve this team because when they went and signed these people to all these contracts last year, they kind of made the conscious decision that they're all in. They think they're closer to contending than maybe other people may believe. And so I feel like when you have a Cy Young type player, you can't just let him walk. They have no choice but are going to be forced to be that team to make the big offer. Because if Bauer walks away, even if he is not the same pitcher as he was last year, losing any type of top-end starter production is going to hurt this team because their offense was just so up and down. They signed so many guys for their offense to have potential, but it was their pitching that ultimately carried them with Bauer and Sonny Gray. That was their strength. So I would not be surprised if they are the team to offer big, and I think they have to. I think they have no choice. No choice but to go out and throw that $30 million contract potentially on the table. If they think Bauer is true to that, be the team to offer. Now, they might have to make some moves to free up some money to get it done, but I feel like that is the most likely team to make this offer to him. It's going to be that average, salary on a short-term deal. That's what it's going to be. Going to have to be overwhelming. Now, the team that I think that should be making the move is going to be the Angels. Let's not kid ourselves. As of right now, off of last season, Bauer is the best possible starting pitcher on the market in free agency. You could talk to me about other names for pitching that are valuable in trade, whatever. I'm not worried about that because the Angels farm system is a whole nother thing. If you want to offer, that's a different conversation, different discussion. But their pitching is atrocious. And what they have spent on money with the contracts of Trout, Pujols, Ohtani, Rendon, along with others, they've made it clear that they are wanting to be competitive, that they think they have an offense there. Well, you're pitching for the second straight season, ranked 25th in the majors with a 5.09 ERA. And that offense scored the 9th most runs last year per game. So you need to do something to combat the pitching staff that you throw out there day to day. And there might be some young potential arms that they believe in. But I sit here and I look at this Angels team and I just think you are wasting Mike Trout. This is one of the first years in a long time he's not in the MVP finalists, but he still had a good season. This production's not going to be here forever. And the contract you got Rendon on, he's going to be good for the next couple of years. I don't know what you're going to get from Pujols. Ohtani is still a question. I mean, the health there is scary. But you spend all this money, you build this offense, you even have a young guy up in Joe Adele coming up. So much that's there. Do something to your pitching staff to help out. And that's why I think they should be the team to be in on Bauer. They should be that team. We'll see if they actually end up being that team. That's a whole nother discussion as well. But go in. Go in. Show that you're committed to getting some pitching for once. The last one I want to talk about, and this one was difficult for me. Having to come up for the best home for Bauer, there's so many that I would be okay with. They make sense. So I cheated on this one a little bit. I have 3 names written down because I think they all make sense. The Yankees are the first one I have. And it's an interesting move. I don't know if the Yankees are really interested in the 1-year contract. That's the thing that I think scares them. I think they would rather try to lock him up for a couple of years. But I just don't think he's going to get a long deal. And the Yankees may like that. They may like that 2 to 3 range. They may not like the idea of having 2 guys being paid $30 million plus a year, but the Yankees then would have 2 top-end starters, Garrett Cole, Trevor Bauer, which they need. And they have questions when it comes to their starting rotation next year. These 2 were teammates at UCLA. There was reports that they don't like each other, but it seems like Bauer's downplayed that and said this is not true. So you bring in 2 guys that have worked with each other before, have potential, and you're going to put these guys in a situation where it's not as stressful. I don't think this was talked about enough with Garrett Cole signing. Now, Garrett Cole had a great season for the Yankees, so don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm downplaying anything he did last year. But when you come to a team where you're getting offensive production, especially when you're like Bauer coming from a team where the offense was hit and miss, it's only going to make you look better. If you can get that 1-year or 2-year deal with the Yankees, have a good record, an all right ERA compared to the year before, but things just look like you had a great season just because you're finally getting some run support, it's going to help him in his quest if he wants to go year by year by year. So I think that's a team he has to consider. And also, he's going to be contending. He's going to be on a contending team. So he has to think about that as well. And I have 2 other teams on a similar spectrum on that same idea in the Twins, where you're going to go and get a lot of offensive production. Also, you have some nice defensive players to help you out there as well. I don't know if his appeal is really with Minnesota, but I mean, he's played in Cleveland and Cincinnati. So, I mean, I don't think being up in any type of AL Central, NL Central is going to bother him. But you'll have offensive production there as well. And you would be the top guy in the staff, and it just strengthens that starting pitching that much more. I think it makes sense, the Twins on a lower level from the Yankees. It's almost like a step down a little bit, but along the same idea. And then one more that might be pretty neck and neck with the Twins, but I got to look at the White Sox. Now, Chicago, this gets interesting because they have a lot of money coming off. Edwin Encarnacion, Alex Colome, James McCann, Jared Dyson, all those becoming free agents. They have about $30 million to spend coming off right there. They got to the postseason. These young guys are figuring it out. They have some pitching coming. Now you add Bauer to this rotation with Giolito, Keuchel, Dylan Cease. I would look at the White Sox becoming favorites in the American League Central. And I don't know if there's necessarily any beef with the Indians, but if he has the chance, same with the Twins, to go into the AL Central and get back at the Indians, I mean, Bauer's a loud guy. Let's be honest. Bauer can be loud and let you know how he's feeling. He might have some bitterness there. Who knows? But I think that would be kind of our best home. Yankees, Twins, White Sox would be the best places for him to go. I think the Angels are the team that should be going to spend on him. And I think the Reds are the team that are going to offer the money. I just think that's how it's going to unfold for Bauer ultimately. What his decision's going to be, that's up to him. But my early thoughts is that's what we're going to be looking at. So that's what I have for Trevor Bauer and predictions on his offseason. I got one more guy I want to talk about. All right, we got one more segment, and I want to dive into it because I think he's another very interesting player when it comes to how their offseason is going to unfold. We're going to talk about one of the best offseason bats that is going to be available for all teams in the MLB to bid after, coming up here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Well, there you go. We got Bauer out of the way. We talked about him. We got all the information that we have to have out there. But it's time to talk about another one of our top free agents, another guy who is going to be interesting and have a lot of suitors, and a guy that in the sense of numbers this year was one of the most productive that we saw. I want to talk about Marcell Ozuna's offseason and what we could see from him, where he's possibly going to go, what's going to happen with his contract. Now, I want to see truly what the numbers are going to be with him when it comes to not just the total money, but also the years as well. Because he is someone that I think is looking for any type of extension where he's getting paid and fully getting the years and security that he wants. But at the same time, he's going to be 30 at opening day, same as Bauer for next year. I wonder how much production we're going to see from him in the outfield, because defensively, yeah, there's better options. And he's just had his, first two appearances in the postseason. 2019 with St. Louis, he was fine in 9 games, batted .324, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. 12 games with Atlanta, .255, batting average obviously went down, but he had some offensive production with 3 home runs and 11 RBIs. So a little taste of the offseason so far. And we talked about it. The defense is going to be a problem. So I wonder if it's truly going to be a American League lean for Azunia. But his offensive bat it's productive enough that you can see him being in the National League. Atlanta just got the best season out of him so far. And yes, the 60 games matters. 18 home runs, 56 RBIs, 338 batting average, 431 on base percentage, slugging of 636, 1.067 OPS, 2.3 WAR. Great season. The year before was St. Louis, 2019, not one of his best, batted 241. The year before that was St. Louis, 280. And then Miami, he was really kind of coming into his own at the end. That's why he was a valuable trade target. So it begs to offer the question, what player are you going to be getting? Are you going to be getting the guy from Miami that was steadily improving, and when he was traded away at some great value, hitting for power, hitting for average? I mean, that last season with Miami in 2017, 37 home runs, 124 RBIs, batting 312, 159 games played. I mean, he was an Iron Man. He was great. First season with St. Louis was okay, but then he got worse. Are you going to get the St. Louis version? He hit some home runs, but that batting average was going down. On-base percentage wasn't that great. His OPS was 800 or below both seasons. Or are you going to get the guy that we just saw from Atlanta who just mashed this year? I look at him and I'm uncertain. I'm uncertain what player you're getting. And I feel like some teams are going to feel that way as well. It was the same thing. Now, St. Louis offered to him an extension. That was out there. That was known. That qualifying offer of $17.8 million. But he passed on it to get a little bit more money with the Braves on a one-year deal and bet on himself. I fear that he's going to get a 1 to 2 year deal, and he's not going to get years. I don't think he turns himself around like Josh Donaldson did with the Braves, because Donaldson has more of a history of successful seasons than Azunia does. And with that, I think it's going to be another short deal, but for big money right away. 1 or 2 years, like I said. Because there's going to be other teams that are scared, have that uncertainty of, well, is this going to be top-notch Azunia, or is this going to be defensive liability, and maybe we're not getting the bat that Atlanta got? Because let's not kid ourselves. When these guys have short-term deals or are going into free agency, they know there's more at stake. So their play rises a little bit. We see it happen all the time. When guys sign big extensions, sometimes they're not playing their best right away. It doesn't mean they're going to be that way forever, but it's that comfort zone, knowing you have a little leeway. Azunia didn't have that. He bet on himself. He might have to bet on himself again. There's quite a few teams here that could push for him as well. I really do think so. I mean, the Braves, obviously, a return is possible. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if the Red Sox have some interest. I mean, this falls in the sense of Jackie Bradley Jr. is leaving. They could move Benintendi to center. You bring him in. JD Martinez is going to be a free agent after 2022. That opens up your DH spot. Like I said, there's American League teams that make a lot of sense. A reunion with the Cardinals isn't out of it. The White Sox could be going in. Hey, Edwin Encarnacion is going to be leaving. Okay, that DH spot is opening in Chicago. Do they think they are right there? Do they believe in their pitching staff enough to go spend some money on a DH? That's possible. The Rangers and Astros, AL West teams that could have openings for them. The Twins. I mean, Nelson Cruz was great for them, but that DH spot is open as well. I've heard talks of the Padres thinking about it. And now this also has a lot to do with the DH as well, but which most likely isn't going to happen because their outfield is pretty well set. But if the DH comes back, I mean, don't be surprised if the Padres think they need to reload and get some more offense to compete with the Dodgers. But I want to move on to the team that I think is going to make the biggest offer. I have a gut feeling on this one. as a team that looked to sign Ozuna last winter before he chose Atlanta, and their offensive ranks being so bad, and then being an American League team which the DH is usable, I think the Texas Rangers are going to shell out. If there's a team that is going to give him years and money, I just feel like it's the Rangers are going to make the big offer. They could have used him massively. Just looking at left fielders, collected 4 home runs with a 594 OPS last year. DH spot, league worst 575 OPS, 4 home runs. Either one of those spots you want to slide him into, he's helping. Offensive production is needed. And the Rangers need to do something to get some butts in the seats in their brand new stadium. Hey, look at our shiny new toy free agent. I just think the Rangers are going to make the offer. And if money is what Ozuna wants, there you go. It makes sense. But if contending is a different story, I got a couple teams I could talk about. So the teams that I think that should make the offer for him, and there's no joke that I'm going for here. It's funny because I wrote this down in my paper. I have an asterisk next to the Astros here, just because I want to think about it. And again, no joke there. But the Astros have George Springer, Michael Brantley, and Josh Reddick all becoming free agents. And having Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez as your outfielders, maybe get all the Tucker productions there, but Yordan Alvarez, you might have some concerns there, especially when he's coming after surgery on both knees, maybe limited to just being a DH. That might leave some outfield spots open. And I don't know if Springer and Brantley have any ill will to the Astros and they want to get out of there and get past everything that's happened in the last few years. But if they do, Ozuna becomes an interesting option there for Houston. So if they don't think they can get those 3 guys back, and there's probably a good chance that all 3 are not going to come back, Ozuna becomes an interesting play. So if I'm the Astros, that's, like I said, I had an asterisk there. It's something to think about depending on where those 3 go. The other one, I do think the Cardinals missed him. Like I said, they made the offer for him to stay. And they could have really used him in this season. They were 14th in the National League in runs scored and last in the majors in home runs. Even with them making the playoffs, playing as competitive as they did, that's what they have. Now, less games also doesn't help them, but I'm looking at all of this. Tyler O'Neill was the guy that took over the spot, and he just has not taken advantage of anything going on. So bringing back Ozuna in hopes that you get the offensive production you just had in Atlanta might be a good move, and especially if the DH returns to the National League. If not, they'll stomach the defense, and they're used to it. They know what it is. So teams that I really do think should be making a push, right there, Astros, Cardinals. Those 2 make sense to me. They make sense to me knowing what they are missing, but also depending on how their team breaks down. But ultimately, I think the best home, I really think he should run it back in Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta is killing the game when it comes to one-year deals. Got the most out of Donaldson, like we said, most out of Ozuna right after. And maybe they're going to look elsewhere, try to find their next guy. But it seemed like he fit so well. And batting behind Acuna, batting behind Freeman may have just brought the best out of Ozuna. And I don't know if it's going to lead to a big contract extension with money and years. But knowing how great your offense was and how much it carried a team that had to really work through some pitching issues, it can't go unnoticed. It really can't. And even though you had promising young pitchers and Ian Anderson and Max Fried, I still think you need to look at where your offense came from, the thing that would carry your team the most. And I think a contract might get done there. I think that's the best option, the best possible option. We'll see if the Braves agree, but it makes the most sense. And, while I don't have it written down for sure, I do understand a White Sox move with all the money they freed up as well. If they don't spend that money on Bauer, like we talked about, that $30 million, and they think that their pitching is enough. Now, we got to talk about their closing situation. Alex Colomé leaving, being one of the top guys available. But there's other closers available. We'll see what the prices go there. Bulking up that offense even more. I mean, he hit well behind Freeman and Acuna. He'll hit fine behind Tim Anderson, Abreu, Moncado, Robert. I mean, all those guys. And he's not going to be asked to play in the field. He's going to be an everyday DH there. And if that's something he wants to do as well, there's your fit. There is your fit. So it's two guys that and Bauer and Azuña, that I just am curious. Very curious as to where they're going to go, because I think they have a boatload of options. You know, it's funny, when you look at a lot of these free agents, and we're going to talk about LeMahieu in future days, we're going to talk about Real Muto in future days, they have options. There's a lot of teams that are potential to go out there, offer the big deal, see where it goes. So don't be surprised if any of these other teams jump in. But those are the ones that the teams that make the most sense to me, the teams I think that will spend, and we'll see what happens. I'm excited for it. So that's going to be it for this episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I'm your host, Collin Manley. Thankful for you downloading, listening. It means a great deal. So glad that you could do this. If you had an opportunity, would love it. If you could leave a positive review, maybe a comment on something you want to talk about. Maybe there's some players that you want to hear me cover coming up in the future. You have thoughts maybe on Bauer and Azuña, where they're going to go. Maybe you have some thoughts in the Mets offseason, some talks on some awards finalists as well. Love to hear from you guys. Want to thank you one last time. I'm signing off here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.